Namaste, welcome to this program. I am Dr. G. Uba and with me Dr. Smita Patil is here. We both are the course coordinators for the course BGDG 172. This course is part of the BA program. The learners who have enrolled in all BA programs in the university, they may be reading this course BGDG 172. The learners who have specially enrolled in the BA Gender Studies, they have this course in the first semester, that is semester 1, BGDG 172, Gender Sensitization, Society and Culture. We have specially designed this course to build the understanding of women's status and condition in the society, to raise the fundamental questions that evolves around the core debates between each of these categories. That is, this course we designed between interlinkages between gender with law, media, work and health. This course also interrogates its role with society and culture, and we have also focused the ways and means to sensitize society on gender issues. These are the broad objective of this course. Let me ask Dr. Smita Patil to explain the entire course structure as well as the content of the course. Then you will be able to, when you read, then you could be able to understand the entire course.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Giuba. Let me quickly talk about the blocks. The first block is dealing with conceptualizing gender, in which that you would sort of going to read many more things, the basic concept and so on. The second block is dealing with gender and family, and in the third block, gender and work, and then in the fourth block, health and gender, and then in the fifth block, gender, law and society, and the block 6 is dealing with gender representation and media. So in order to understand, the block title itself is sort of trying to explain what is the content of it. And many of them who are sort of engaging with this course while reading the material, because we are offering this particular course both in English and Hindi. बीच में मैं हिंदी में भी बोलूँगी, इसलिए जो हिंदी के छात्र हैं वो भी इसको थोड़ा और समझें, क्योंकि हम जब जेंडर की बात करते हैं तो पहला ही जो ब्लॉक है जिसके ऊपर हम कंसेप्ट के ऊपर जब बोलते हैं, तो ये जब संकल्पनाएं जो आई है, ये जो कॉन्सेप्ट कैसे आया, उसको हम कैसे देखते हैं, ये भी हमें समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है. तो पहला जो चैप्टर या यूनिट हम बोलते हैं उसके बारे में कि अंडरस्टैंडिंग जेंडर रिलेटेड कॉन्सेप्ट. जैसे कि व्हेन वी बिगन विद द स्मॉल थिंग्स, we need to understand what is concept. Why do we understand the concept? It is specifically that we have to have the clarification as a beginner, and then to evolve very seriously, thoroughly what the other theoretical position can be, sort of frame and understand. For instance, sex and gender category. For instance, masculinity, femininity. For instance, power relations. For instance, the ways in which that in everyday life, how, patriarchy operates. Right? So there are a number of gender roles. So there are a number of concepts which are evolved, and how do we then, relate and define this concept in relation with this particular course. So the unit 1 is in fact dealing with several concepts in which one is engaging with particularly the concept which we use in everyday life, and it's a very important as a student of women's and gender studies, gender and development studies, to basically understand this concept. This concept also is dealing the kind of case studies we have given in this particular course is dealing several case studies from everyday life has been explained to you to make you understand gender is not something what we are speaking in a year. It is something which we have to seriously look into to sort of bring out a transformation, to bring out a change in the society, because when we are talking about in the title that gender sensitization and why do we need, so it is in fact the title of the course itself is as a beginner, you have to sort of interrogate why we are studying this. The unit 2 of this particular block is dealing with gender and sexuality. Through this particular unit, one is going to understand what does it mean, sexuality. Does the sexuality come suddenly? No, it has a history. The sexuality also is a social construction. So you are going to engage and understand the ways in which that the social construction of the sexuality occurs, right? At the same time, it is sort of enabling learners to understand the sexuality in a broad framework of patriarchy, because when we talk about these debates of sexuality and patriarchy, we have to also sort of understand. When I said initially the masculinity, now let me brought out this debate again. How do you understand patriarchy and masculinity? There's a thin line between that. So through this particular unit, you are going to understand, and there are several examples given to you by us that you would clearly understand, and there are different scholars who have done a fascinating work. Like, for instance, to cite one of them is Sanjay Srivastava, right? He has done a very interesting work on that. At the same time, that how this debate emerged in the West. Like, for instance, when we talk about this debate on sexuality, you might understand the concept of power, which is often coming in everyday relationship, but also in terms of that. So quickly you are going to understand what is Foucault's position, what is Judith Butler's position, and there are many more. Like, for instance, Gail Rubin is one of the very leading scholars who articulated these debates, and this debate in fact emerged from anthropologists, ethnographers, social scientists, particularly sociologists, and then from that how it developed and engaged particularly, and what the feminists have offered the critique to it. It also not only discusses the how does it impact the sexuality in the everyday life. The unit 4 is dealing with, and in fact, the concept of masculinity, right? In a detailed manner, one is going to understand how do we define masculinity. Is that masculinity, the category of masculinity, is changing? Yes, it does changing. There is a toxic masculinity. So the ways in which that masculinity is defined historically, and what kind of changes are occurring. So again, it is going to deal with the construction of the masculinity, the ways in which society is created. To cite one example, that you just watch the advertisement, how the female and male body is projected in the advertisement. Male is always shown a masculine, where on the other hand, of course that picture is changing right now, but it's usually how the mindset goes on in the society. It also describes the linkages between masculinity, patriarchy, violence, sexuality, and then further on what kind of forms of masculinities are there, how impact on men, women, and then in the societies in general. Unit 4 is dealing with the gender in everyday life. Again, that what we have read in Unit 1, the basic concepts. How these basic concepts are there in our everyday life, how do we use? For instance, it's sort of going to explain the process of the gender construction in relation to the culture and ordering of the society. Any society, if we have to really study, we have to go back to the culture, how culture is, framing the society. And then it further, sort of examines the implication of the gender construction in relation to the development, what kind of indicators are there, like, for instance, the sex segregation, division of labor, decision making, and socialization. And then further, it is dealing with the relationship between the gender and structural arrangements in the society. For instance, class, caste, and several divisions are there in the society, which is a structural society which we live. And then race, ethnicity, and then further it analyzes the necessary features or the universal position of the gender construction, how it has been. I would request Dr. G. Uma to carry forward the block 2 debates.
Thank you, Dr. Smita Patil. Now let us start with block 2. Block 2 basically talks about the gender and family. Basically, two units are there in the block 2. One is about the family and marriage. The second one is the motherhood. In the family and marriage, we have explained about the nature and functions of the family. You all know that family as an institution, it's a very significant institution in the personal space. It constructs the gender, and as well as it plays a significant role to reinforces the existing patriarchy in the private space. So it is important to know the different types of family and types of marriage existing in the society. The second unit is about the motherhood in this block. Specifically in the motherhood block, we have talked about the motherhood in the context of gender roles in India. You all know what is gender roles. In the block 1 itself, we have explained the different, gender roles, how the gender roles is constructed. The existing socialization process talks about the expects like a institutions, like a society, marriage, family, all these institutions, they expect what types of roles the female they have to play in the various social structures, as well as what types of or what kind of roles the male they have to play in the society. So these roles we have explained in the context of motherhood in this unit, as well as the unit has located the motherhood in the context of globalization and how this market and other social structures play a significant role in motherhood. That was explained in this unit. Block 3 is very significant. In this block, there are two units, that is gender and work. First one is gendering work. The second unit in this block, that is unit 8, is gender issues in work and labor market. With regard to gender and work, the unit starts with defining work, and as well as it discusses the traditional and contemporary discourses of work. It describes the international standards of measurement of work and analyzes the reasons for gender gap in labor force participation and gender discrimination in the work. You all must know that, there is always the female work participation rate is very less compared to male members in the society. Now, when you look at the data on female labor force participation, it is between the 27% to 35%. It is not increasing more than 35% in India. That's why it's important to know the reasons for how the work is defined and how these various structures play a significant role in the life of the women with regard to work. The next unit is about gender issues in work and labor market. In this unit, we have listed the issues related to women's and labor employment, describe the issues related to labor and employment of women, and examining the implications of gender on labor and employment of women. Now, I request Dr. Smita Patil to continue this block 4 till block 6.
Yeah. Now, in order to understand this particular course, when we also look at, as I mentioned by Dr. G. Uma in the initial stage, that these are the 6 blocks and why we, sort of design this course. To, health is something which is very important in relation to gender. If you, in average, you see most of the women, in terms of the woman, for instance, if we take example of the women, we would see that majority of them sort of neglect the health issues, right? But something which is again been a very important for the woman to look into, because it's a woman who, as Dr. G. Uma mentioned about the motherhood and the family, in the family that the reproductive health and rights have never been discussed. I mean, there are different provisions done by the government of India, to secure this, and there is of course organized and unorganized women workers. There are special provisions given to the women, for instance, like the maternity leave, right? But then when they are pregnant, so but one should know that what exactly reproductive health and right means. So you are going to go and learn through this particular unit, what does it mean reproductive health and rights, what kind of rights you have, right? At the same time, how these laws, also the engagement of law is a very important in this also, that how eventually the petitions have been filed by several people, and then as a response that the the government always look into this and eventually that the rights of the reproductive health and rights have been given to us. So it is sort of going to comprehend the indicators of the reproductive health and rights. It's sort of going to explore about the various international conventions and their roles in implementing the reproductive rights and their approaches. It also going to go and engages us about the reproductive and child health policy, which is called RCH in India, because it's not only the mother, it's only the baby which is again been there. We have to look into this very carefully while talking about this framework of the reproductive health and the rights. So what kind of provisions the government and what kind of the international conventions sees about that? So we are going to aware about this, and there are different sort of case studies which have been mentioned. And for instance, that when we are talking about the motherhood also, there's also been idea of the surrogacy. What does it mean surrogacy? What rights have been given? Is it that it is legalized or not? So you are going to go and learn about these things, but as it also has a connection with the reproductive rights then. So how do you go about it? How do you understand? How do you offer a criticism to this also? So Unit 10 is then dealing with gender and disability. Now, whom we should call disabled? There's a lot of debate, and most recently a year before that, few changes has been done in the disability law. Now, there are different actors involved by the state, right? And this debate has been taken place long, and therefore that the concept of disability evolved over a period of time in India. It's been also called the able body and disabled body. In some cases in the West, this terminology able body is used, right? So in Indian context, you are going to understand the concept of disability. At the same time, how this concept emerged, what are the historical, evolution of it. How do you then engage with the social attitudes and the stereotypes towards the disability? Because for instance, take an example, and the chapters also provides a lot of examples of it, but I would say that while reading nearby, look at television, newspaper, magazines, how disabled people have been treated in general within family. You look at across, you can find out. So while engaging with this theory and text also, look at the everyday experiences while you travel by metro or train or buses or while walking. So you are going to go and understand that what is written, it is in fact that's a reality. So it is sort of going to engage again the explain gender issues and disability, because again that disability also has a connection with gender. And there are good feminist scholars like Renu Adilika or Anita Gai, Shubhangi Vaidya from this university also sort of brought out a new interesting work. So you can also engage with this reading list which we have given. You can, if you are really interested to know more about and gain knowledge about this, you can always evolve and engage with this seriously. At the same time that you have to also understand, do they really face what kind of violence do they face, and how do we in everyday the issues of disability and violence we should engage with and address that. At the same time, block 5 is dealing with gender, law and society, and in this unit 11, gender based violence is one of the very important unit which you should relate in your again everyday life. Through this, that you are going to understand the concept of what is gender-based violence. And like for instance, there is a structural violence, right? There's a systemic violence. How do you define gender-based violence? In both cases, there is a gender. There is a violence, right? And also the gender is a category in both. But then through illustrations, the forms of gender-based violence, and to extend that, how it is prevalence in India and elsewhere, you are going to learn about this. And there are different kinds of example which, informs us that, and the latest data which shows us that it's increasing day by day. Now, what will be the reasons? Like today, if we study gender-based violence, we have to also see that the ways in which now, like past 10 years, the social media and the young generation is extremely active in social media. So gender trolling is one of the violence, right? How do we address that? The contemporary challenges of the gender-based violence in that. Of what hate speech, right? We do have in 2017 a policy which is given by the government of India, right? A policy document, and also the laws are also framed. But how we should, address that in day-to-day basis, right? At the same time, identity which causes and consequences of such violence and highlights various ways of addressing and responding to such violence, including through law and social actions. Then Unit 12 is dealing with the sexual harassment at workplace. This has again been a very, very serious and crucial issue across the world, and especially also in India. I mean, there are different institutions which have the legal framework and the laws and the policies, but how we should understand the concept and meaning of the sexual harassment at workplace. At the same time, what kind of forms of the sexual harassment at the workplace and to what extent one can prevalence there, highlights various ways of addressing and responding to these kind of cases, right, including law and social action. Now, all of us knows that sexual harassment at workplace, the 2013 Act, right? But then how one should engage with that? For instance, if the sexual harassment is happening, where do you go, where to place this thing? If you know the laws very well, then only you can sort of able to engage with that, right? Otherwise, then you cannot take it forward probably, and then you sort of only remain in silence, which cause to you different kinds of problem, right? So there are different multiple ways to deal with that, right? The Unit 6, which is dealing with gender representation and media, in which gender and language is the unit, which is going to talk about how this category and concept of sex and gender has been defined. To look into this debate that how language plays an important role in everyday life, how language, who in fact coins language, how the question of the language and gender is interlinked with each other. At the same time, there are one would describe gender differences in language use. I mean, there are different kinds of languages written and spoken in India and across the world. But then how language and gender is having relationship. It also will demonstrate the relationship between gender and language and analyze the gender boundaries and social expectation to use as a socio-culture norms, and then distinguish masculine and feminine, and analyze the cause and the differences within that. So in order to in fact understand this entire course, those who are studying in English and Hindi, both medium, on behalf of both of us, I would, sort of urge to you to look into this while reading, look into your surroundings, look at your everyday experience even. and look at that, how we can sort of bring the changes, not only studying through this, but in sort of bringing out in our action and in everyday practices, how we can sort of build up the egalitarian society. So I'm sure that you are going to go and read this material very seriously, and wish you all the best on our behalf. And you would going to be the next generation, student who would bring out many more things after reading this. You can reach out to us, and I would say that Dr. G. Uma, you can write to her, Dr. G. Uma @IGNOU.ac.in, and you can also write to me, that's Smita M. Patil @IGNOU.ac.in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.